Hello, Shankar, are you there?
Yes, Bede, very much here. How are you?
Hi, how are you going?
Good.
Good. Now, what I want to do is I want to continue on our conversation before yesterday, or the last time we were together, and we were discussing the fact that in terms of our life comes to us one moment at a time, and each moment, if we are to stay in harmony with it, we have to be able to see exactly what is happening, and then we have to have the discrimination to see what is the exact value that I can bring to this situation which will actually make it better, which will actually give the situation what it needs. For example, if someone needs to be listened to, we listen. If the room needs to be tidied, we tidy. In other words, we're talking about a responsiveness to each moment as it comes up that is based on awareness and discrimination.
Yep. Based on awareness and discrimination.
Yes.
Okay.
So basically what is the basis of our responsiveness is not habitual behavior, but what needs to be done in that particular situation.
I'm a bit confused about you keep saying what needs to be done to a particular situation, as if there is always one right way to do for every particular situation.
That's right.
Is that
each situation which is entirely new, that has never happened before, needs to be responded in terms of what that situation needs. So we need to be able to respond in a non-harmful and beneficial way.
An optimal response.
Appropriate to the situation.
Appropriate, okay.
Okay, and this appropriateness, this appropriate response can't possibly happen if we're caught up in habitual behavior based on the past. So if the basis of our behavior is based on our past conditioning, then that is not based on what we're actually looking at and what is needed.
I'm a bit confused, Bede. You're saying that if your response is based on your past habitual behavior, it might not be the right response.
Yeah, it's not going to be specific to that situation, and the basis of it isn't the present time awareness of what is needed. The basis of it is simply an automatic, habitual, mindless action, which may or may not deal reasonably effectively with that moment.
Okay. I want to take a step back, Bede. What is you mentioned that there is a requirement to deal appropriately with a moment. That is, the beneficiary is ourselves, is it, for that?
That's right.
I mean,
For example, my actions always produce results. So if I fail to meet, let's say, for example, my partner is upset with me, and I say, well, to hell with it, I'm going to go off to the pub, right? That action is going to have a consequence, and probably not a good one.
For you?
For me in my life, yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
And also for the marriage and also for the family life, it's going to have a consequence.
Yep.
You see, because in terms of action, we can do something, do nothing, or do something different. So we can do the same, do nothing, or do something differently.
Okay.
Now, our life is activity.
Yep.
We are always engaged in the activity of living. The question is what is the basis of that living? Is it mindless habits that have been accumulated from the past? Or is it going to be based on present time responsiveness, awareness of what is happening?
Okay.
So when we look at, now let's just have a look at the three basic categories of habitual behavior or activity, that what I call mindless. Have you ever noticed that sometimes you can just be caught up in daydreaming?
In daydreaming, yep.
In daydreaming. So what happens is you're not really aware of your surroundings or what's happening, but you just, there's a tendency to engage habitually in daydreaming, a habit of daydreaming. It's not that you decide. Sorry?
Whenever I drive, I'm miles away.
Right. So what happens is it's not that you decide, okay, this is what this situation is happening. I think I better daydream here. You just simply find yourself in the groove of daydreaming. And in that way, it's mindless. It's mindless in the sense it is not the response to awareness and discrimination of what's needed at this moment. It is just simply a mindless habit that comes into operation.
Yep.
Okay.
It's habitual, almost involuntary.
It has nothing to do with the will, actually. If you notice that you have been daydreaming, you go, I better pay attention to the road, and then you might shift your attention, right? But there's no attentiveness in it. So what we're looking at is we're looking at association. In other words, what happens is the memory in the past kind of looks at what's happening in the present, and on the basis of similarities normally, not differences actually. You know, have you ever seen people say, this is exactly what happened last time?
Yep.
It's never what happened last time. It's a completely new moment. However, the tendency when this habitual emotional reactivity comes into operation is you don't see any differences. It just simply interprets on the basis of the past, and this is it. Okay?
Yep.
So, because this is a completely mindless. It's a mindless association. So it associates the present event in terms of its likeness to what's happened in the past, and then your mind creates an interpretation as to what is happening.
That's why you call it association.
That's why you call it association. So the basis of the present interpretation you have of reality, which is subjective, the basis is association.
Okay.
The present event is associated with similar events in the past, and on that basis, it's interpreted. That's why people always say, oh, this reminds me, it's exactly the same. Have you heard people say it's exactly the same as what happened last time?
Yep.
Or you're always doing this. Have you ever heard that phrase?
Yes.
You know what I mean? For some reason, I always remain the same.
Yep.
Because the same mechanism, it just works on that basis. So you have this mindless emotional reactivity. So suddenly, without your will, without awareness, without discrimination, you just find yourself being upset, confused, angry, sad, bored, or whatever.
Yep.
Okay?
Okay.
So that's the second category of mindless activity.
So one is daydreaming, the other one is mindless reactivity. Okay.
Yes. And the second one is behavior. You know how, have you ever ridden a bike with a friend and you just have a conversation? You're not aware of riding the bike, are you?
No.
And it's actually quite important to be able to put it on habits to come into operation, because it frees our attention to, say, talk to our friend.
Yep.
But the downside is this, is that most of our behavior when it comes to other people is habitual. We've got the social conditioning. Hi, Shankar, how are you? Oh, g'day, how are you? You can go through the social motions, even quite skillfully as like a trained actor who knows the script. But it's not based on awareness. It's not based on what is exactly needed in that situation or awareness. It might be incredibly useful in terms of a background. The people who've got a very let's say, skilled and socially acceptable repertoire of behavior that comes automatically into operation, we call them socially adjusted. People who don't have, we call them socially maladjusted. But
Yeah.
both, what I'm pointing out is that both are habits.
Both are?
Both are habits,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
you see, when we're talking about an aware responsiveness to this present moment and being able to respond to it and bring the exact value that's needed, this has a profound effect on the quality of our mind.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if we just simply mindlessly live out our life, nothing changes. We just go through the motions. We have the same kind of reactions, the same kind of emotions, the same kind of thinking, the same kind of behavior, and the same kind of results. And funnily enough, we call this our life. We call this life. We call it living. Now, if you think about living, the verb to do you mean? It is only actually when we are aware and attentive to what is happening, and we are responding to that in terms of what is genuinely in our best interest, that you could say that I'm engaged in performance of action.
Okay.
I'm actually living my life. But when I'm completely absorbed in habitual daydreaming, emotional reactivity, and behavioral patterns that have been learned from the past, that you can't really call that your life. It's not your life as a conscious human being. It's a mindless dramatization of our past mental and physical content that's been formed in us in terms of habits, and that constantly is being triggered by the present moment in terms of association.
So you're saying that those three behaviors you mentioned, you're almost an autopilot. You're not in control. You're not discriminating, and you're living life only when you can discriminate and respond appropriately.
When you are aware of what is happening in front of you, you're aware of what is needed, and that becomes the basis of how you act, not what's happened before, not this associative mechanism, which is entirely really reactive, automatic. What happens is, if that comes into operation, basically we never learn or even come to understand what it is to live our life. Our life is actually, in one sense, being lived.
Okay.
So we're engaged, we're sort of carried along in a mindless dramatization.
Okay.
And so what happens here is this. It's a question of what are you going to listen to. So when something happens, either you get swept up in the automatic reactions that are not based on the awareness of what is actually happening, that are not based on what's needed, or you come under the sway of awareness and discrimination. Now, in Vedanta, it is considered that in order to transform ourselves as individuals so that we actually come to know what a quality of mind that we call happy, that quality of mind that we have has a direct relationship to how we live our life. And when we are living our life in the right way, in the sense of we're aware and our actions are based on discrimination, that has a profound effect on the quality of our emotional life, and a profound impact on the people and environment around us. But when we leave it to the automatic pilot, it is like You're driving down the road and you go, hey, I'm just going to let the car drive itself.
Yep.
And that has a tremendous impact, not only on the quality of our life, because if we do not do what we know to be in our best interests, there is a lowering of self-respect for some reason. For some reason, if we don't hold up our end and do it exactly, and do our duty, and in the old-fashioned days, duty meant to give what's due, to the situation. It wasn't a negative thing. If we do not respond in the best possible way by bringing the exact value that's needed, we experience a mental and even physical deterioration.
Okay.
So in Vedanta, this whole issue of an alert and deliberate life where we use our will, we see what's needed. You know how, like, for example, we may not want to do the room, but we use our will and we go, okay, I may not like to do it, and when we do it, we do feel a sort of a satisfaction, don't we?
Yeah.
Even though we have to sort of push ourselves a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's not a high that we feel. We just feel a sense of completeness or wholeness, don't we? When we do it right.
We feel in control.
That's right. Not control like domination, but we just feel that we're living our life.
Yep. So in a way, you're saying that you give every moment and act on its merits rather than give into the autopilot behavior.
Yes, and also you see the agenda with other people. If I approach other people on the basis of just simply, I'm with them in this moment and I'm just going to be attentive to what is needed, I then completely shift away from this whole thing of proving myself to others. I won't be subtly bragging in order to look good. I won't be self-conscious. I wonder how I'm coming across. Do they find me acceptable or not? All of that is left behind because we've shifted the basis of our actions. The basis of our actions is no longer our desires and aversions that just happen to be there.
Yep.
The basis of our action is what is required in our life. And the more we live this way, the more we see the value in living this way.
This transformation of being alert and giving each moment its due and responding appropriately, bringing in the value that it deserves. That's a gradual process, is it?
Yeah. First of all, we have to. If we can see that there's a value in living our own life, to living a consciously alert life that responds to what's needed, and we discover the value for that. Whenever we value something, our minds automatically tend towards it, but we have to learn it. It's not a black and white. We'll notice, oh, there I go again, I reacted. But then we shift back. We shift to responding. So we may have talked badly to our spouse and we go, I'm sorry, darling, I just lost it there, I'm sorry. Can we start again? So we shift. But now, once we've got the contrast, we can now see both sides, you see. Without the contrast, we actually don't see. And the more we practice living from this consciously alert awareness of what each moment is bringing and responsiveness, the more aware we become actually. And we also become aware when we've lost that awareness, when we've suddenly we're on autopilot again, when we're just simply emotionally reacting, or we're just simply going on automatic in terms of our behavior to other people. So that when we meet people, we're actually meeting people. On automatic, we don't meet people. We just see objects.
Yep. Is there a lot of effort involved in being alert and being conscious all the time? Not being
alert, no. The thing is, again, we're not trying to be alert. If we're interested in seeing what has happened and we see the value of responding, we become alert, so long as we value it. And then we have to use it, and there's a lot of people in the spiritual world, the will is the bad guy, like just surrender the will and all that nonsense. The fact of the matter is, if we don't live in the right way, we deteriorate mentally. So we have to use our will. I might feel like shouting at you, Shankar, because I feel you've insulted me. I might have that impulse. Now, I now have a choice. If I've dedicated myself and committed myself to being non-harmful and responsive to a situation, I will see that I have an impulse where I want to shout at you and maybe call you names. And I don't deny that impulse. The thing is, I don't act on it. And I use my will. I just swallow the impulse. I use my will. And this is a good thing. When I use my will to conform to what I really know is really the best, that will is free, isn't it? It's not like an imposition. I'm using my will to perform an action that I know would be in my best interest. My awareness and discrimination tells me this is in my best interest. My binding desires and aversions tell me something different. So it's a question, isn't it? What am I going to listen to? Am I going to listen to my binding desires and aversions that have very little to do with what's going on? Or am I going to listen to my awareness and discrimination? So that's the fundamental choice. At each moment, this fundamental choice is there. What voice am I going to listen to? Okay?
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Shankar. Would you like to say anything before we finish?
No, look, the concept of bringing in awareness and treating every moment on its merits, and the benefits it brings to you to the person, that appeals to me. The big thing is, you mentioned a technique where you do stray once in a while, but more often you bring it back.
You will stray a lot. You're going to stray a lot. In this practice, we stray a lot. But the thing is this. We first of all establish clearly for ourselves, we know that this is the best way for us to live. It's truly in our best interest. But we also know that the reactive mechanism, which is driven by desires and aversions, the reactive mechanism is a pressure to act often contrary to that.
Yes.
So the important point is we're going to get used to working with both. So what's important is the recognition that we've lost our way. As soon as we recognize that, we move back to awareness and responsiveness. The next moment, 3 or 4 moments later, we might go off. So it's like practicing a bow and arrow. Hitting the target, we go there, okay, we aim, boom, next moment comes up. We try and aim and hit the target exactly as needed. Sometimes we just drop the bow and arrow and just strike out. That's true. Oh. Then we pick it up again, next moment. Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Shankar.
Thank you, Bede. Pleasure as ever.
I'll catch you next time. Ciao.